Alright, so welcome back to Rick's Trains. Today I took some modeling outside. I figured this way I don't have to use my spray booth or anything like that. I don't need to worry about ventilation. So I did bring a piece of foam board out here to just kind of lay down on the ground. That way I have a nice, big, clean work area. So as you can see, I'm doing probably one of the most dreaded things in the hobby today, which is airbrushing. A lot of people are scared of this piece of mystical, magical piece of equipment, and I will tell you that I was once one of those people that was afraid to use my airbrush, afraid to even purchase one, because I thought, oh geez, I don't know, I've heard all these horror stories about cleaning them out and things like that. So I've been airbrushing for a few years now, and this is an airbrush I picked up recently. It's called the Neo. It's from Iwata, and it's a gravity feed double action airbrush. So it's got, I think, better control than using a single action airbrush. You can use single action, but it comes with sort of a pain of having to adjust your the amount of paint that you're going to deliver. Whereas with the double action that I have here, simple press of the button turns on your airflow, and then as you pull it back, it will increase the amount of paint you deliver. What I always think is, I'll just apply little bits at a time, and I can always go back and put on more. So very rarely do I pull my paint action lever back all the way. I usually just kind of toy with it back and forth as I'm moving across the model. I think I picked up this airbrush at my local hobby store for around $100. And I would encourage you to do the same. Visit your local hobby store. Most hobby stores carry Iwata airbrushes. Look for a dual action airbrush. I think that's the better way to go. I think, even though some may tell you differently, I think that the learning curve on a dual action is maybe a little bit less, or it's at least a little bit less frustrating than what a single action airbrush is. Next we have the air compressor, which you obviously need. This is the Testors Aztec, which you can pick up again at a local hobby store. You can pick them up off of Amazon or various other websites for less than $50. It's a really nice air compressor. It does what I need it to do for spraying my models. The last thing, this is something you don't necessarily need. It's a really nice glass jar that Iwata sells. This is basically for cleaning out your airbrush, especially if you're going to be changing colors. I personally think this is a must-have. So, or you could use it to clean your airbrush before you go ahead and put it away. Makes it so that you can spray your paint right inside of it, and you can clean it out later. It's really easy to clean the inside of it out, being that it's just basically a glorified glass jar. But like I said, it does have a filter in it, so that it keeps all the harmful stuff from contaminating the air around you. More importantly, so that you don't breathe it, and that sort of thing. For my airbrushing purposes, it may seem kind of silly, but one of the things I like to do is take a permanent marker or piece of tape or whatever and mark the back of my model. I've frustratingly, I don't even know if that's a word, have painted the wrong side of a model before. So I just go ahead real quick and flip over any pieces that I'm going to paint. I mark the back of those surfaces. Sometimes it's just hard to tell, like, am I painting the front or am I painting the back right now? The only thing I will say is, don't mark along the top edges of buildings, because you probably have to paint those at some time anyhow. But I do like to mark the back just so that I don't waste my time spraying, and I don't waste the time, or the paint, spraying the back of my model. You don't have to mark every piece. I just like to mark one of the pieces on one of the parts, so just so I know that I'm in fact painting the right side. Okay, now that I've finished with that, let's talk about paint. Personally, I really like the Vallejo Model Air paints. There's a lot of different colors. One of the things I like about them the most is that you don't have to thin them. If you use regular Vallejo paints, then yes, you'll have to thin them for sure. If you look at Vallejo's website, you don't really have to thin these, although you still can if you feel the need to. But I really like these. They're designed specifically to use with airbrushes, so Vallejo knows that, hey, you can't make the pigments too large that they'll clog your airbrush. So keep that in mind. Like I said, I really like this paint. I think it goes on really well. It's very easy to use. You can still thin it out if you want to, which my recommendation would be to pick up Vallejo's thinner. Okay, I would do that. Make sure you get the right thinner. That's why I like to not switch brands and things like that. Alright, so I'll try to talk loud enough here over my air compressor, but this is the Vallejo paint that I just showed you. It's air, it's the air paint, and what I'm going to do is just lightly coat my model. I'm just going to do one piece at a time, probably going to move some pieces aside, just to kind of demonstrate for you how to do this. It's not really that hard. Okay, so one thing I really like to do is once I start my air compressor, I've got my paint in the gun, what I like to do is just sort of test what it's going to be like. And like I said, I push down for air so I can blow off my model if I need to without painting it. Also, like I said, I like to do this on a piece of foam or an old piece of wood or something like that, just so I can spray on there to make sure that my paint is coming out like I want it to. And that helps me get a feel for the action that I'm looking for. Like I said, you can always add more paint. You might wonder, like, why are you painting a model that's already basically that color? The reason for that is that the plastic doesn't have any tooth for any kind of weathering that I'm going to do. So personally, I like to paint my model first. Also, a lot of times on plastic kits, you'll see that there's definitely some variation in the plastic finish. So I really just lightly am going to go back and forth. Now, I'm not looking for a perfect finish. I'm not painting a model car. So I'm not looking for this perfect gloss coat of paint. I am going to weather this structure, so painting it and making it perfect is not necessarily all that important, which is good. I basically think that I got most of the model. If not, like I said, I can always go back. Like I said, you'll get used to the action. You know, I've practiced on pieces of paper and things like that, but this is basically just step one of my process, is to spray the model with the color that I want the base to be, and then I'll go back over and I'll actually weather my models basically using a brush. And so we'll get to that next time around. And again, please like, subscribe, comment, tell me how you are enjoying these videos. Hopefully you are. Before I go, I'll show you how I'm going to clean the airbrush, but let me finish painting my model first. Okay, so I finished spraying my model. I sprayed all the parts that I wanted to spray in this gray color. Now what I want to do is, if I'm going to switch colors or if I'm done with my airbrush today, I'm going to take whatever the thinner medium is. In this case, you could actually use water, because I am using a water-based paint. But I'll just simply take this thinning medium and run it through my airbrush just like as if I were painting. And see, do it until it all goes out. Most likely, whether I'm changing colors or cleaning my airbrush, I'll do this until the paint bowl is clean. Just like if you're painting anything else, you'd want to make sure your brush is clean. Well, kind of the same idea here. I do like to keep some paper towel handy, and what I'll do is just take it, get it in there, and try to clean that paint bowl out really well. Like I said, I've been using this airbrush for a number of years now, so I want to make sure that as long as you keep it clean, this airbrush should last for a really long time. So I've actually come into the back into the basement here. Put some water in here because I actually ran out of thinner medium. Which is the nice thing again about using those Vallejo water-based paints, is to clean my airbrush, or perhaps to thin. If in worst case scenario I could use just plain old water, although it doesn't do as well as the actual thinner that Vallejo makes. The surface tension is a little bit different versus if you use water or if you use their actual thinner. Okay, so now what I'm actually going to do is go ahead and take the airbrush apart, which is very, very simple. I like to take, everything should be just finger tight. I'm going to do this one-handed. And this will make sure that your airbrush is completely clean. Like I said, it's not that hard to take apart. I'm doing it with one hand, holding my phone with the other right now, so it's really not that difficult. If you just take off the cap on the back, this is just to protect the back side of the needle. And again, just loosen that sort of little thumb screw there and pull your needle out. I just take a wet paper towel and wipe it, which I'll do off camera here in a second. And I'll basically make sure that everything at the tip of the airbrush here is clean. Everything came out clean last time. I'm going to do a little bit of cleaning in there again. Run some water in there and use a paper towel. Whatever your thinning medium is, so if it's just water-based paint, just use water. If it's lacquer, you have to use lacquer thinner. Whatever you would clean a brush off if you were painting something around the house, same thing to do the cleanup on an airbrush. So not really all that different. Okay, so I've got my airbrush back together, and the one last thing I like to do is just double check not only function, but just to make sure I got every little droplet of paint out before I put my airbrush away. This may be a little bit excessive, but that's just how I like to do it. The other nice thing about this Iwata cleaning cup here that I forgot to mention is that it's a really nice way to store your airbrush in between coats or in between colors or breaks in your video or whatever the case might be. But what I like to do is check the function of my airbrush as well as make sure it's clean. So what I will do, I get a piece of paper towel, fold it up, and hook up my airbrush. I'll turn it on here, and I will just spray onto my paper towel here, spraying just fine, and everything is nice and clean. Thanks again for watching. I will see you next time, or at least I hope so. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, I'll be having a part 2 on airbrushing. Once I get my model, once it dries, I'll get it all back. I'll get it all glued up, and then we'll go into some weathering, some of which I'll do by hand. And in the future, I'm sure I'll have more airbrushing techniques coming your way. Again, thanks, and have a great day.